Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, helping you to find jargon-free information before choosing a professional to help solve your problems and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And during this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased. I'm skipping, I'm hopping, I'm doing cartwheels because we finally have Robin Graine, certified mediator and certified divorce financial analyst and owner of Graine Mediation in Fairfax, Virginia. Now, Robin, who is considered to be somewhat of a leader in the area of divorce mediation, will be talking to you today about the impact of the new tax code on divorce. Now, I understand this is a new national law, so if you are one of the increasing numbers of people who are considering divorce in the Fairfax, Virginia area, it might be a good idea for you just to down tools, log out of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or just take a break with anything else you happen to be doing which may cause a distraction. And you might even want to grab yourself a notepad and pen and get ready to listen in to what Robin has to share with us today. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you so much, Stuart. I'm happy to be with you today.
And we are so happy to have you on. So let's make the best use of our time, Robin. Briefly, in your own words, describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help.
I'd be happy to. Well, I'm in Northern Virginia, and most of my clients, as a result, are working in one way or another, either for the federal government or their jobs have something to do with the federal government. I would say the vast majority of my male clients, anyway, the husbands, are in the IT industry. I also have a lot of business owners, and many of my cases involve fairly complex finances. We deal with a lot of pensions, complex real estate situations, military divorces, that type of thing. Most of my clients tend to be educated, bachelor's degree and up, and have been married somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 years. The majority of my clients have kids, 1 to 2 children usually, sometimes grown. But usually we're working on custody, child support, things of that nature. I would also say, interestingly enough, that about half of my cases have adultery in there somewhere. Sometimes it's admitted, sometimes it's not, but the other person's saying that this is what happened, which I find to be an astoundingly high number and something that surprised me when I opened my business. My clients also tend to be able to listen to key information, pull from that what they need, and settle their cases. So as I like to say, I am primarily an educator, and I don't use my mediator referee skills as much as I might somewhere else.
So before we go any further then, Robin, it must be said that anything you share with us today is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of disseminating information. Now, can you just expand a little bit on that in your own words, please, Robin?
As far as legal information?
Exactly.
Legal
Let's
advice?
just make it absolutely clear.
Yeah. And that's really easy for me to do because it's the same rules in mediation as the rules that you're expressing for your show. As a mediator and as somebody who's an interviewee on your show, I can provide legal information which includes information about the tax code. I can also provide information about the financial impact of divorce. I can also provide information about the impact of divorce on children, both as they're growing up and some of the things that we see happen when they become parents themselves. But the difference between information and advice is that information is just what it says. It's information for the person to do with as they choose. Advice is what an attorney gives. Do this, don't do that. And that's not appropriate for a show like this because, of course, I wouldn't have all the information, all the underlying information, the facts and circumstances of the listener, number one. Number two, as a mediator, we are not permitted under the Mediator Code of Ethics in Virginia, I doubt it's any different anywhere else, to give advice, just information. And then the second part of our job is to help the clients, the husband and the wife, or the mother and the father, to use that information to reach a mutually agreeable settlement.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us, Robin. It's good just to make that clear before we continue with any further questions. So with that said, what's the most common misconception you come across while you're out there helping the people who you help on a day-to-day basis? Now, I understand there's going to be scores of misconceptions that you come across, but just share one or two with us, please.
Well, I would say, and this goes for sort of the key topic of the day, the implications of the new tax law, the new federal tax law on divorce. I find one of the most common misconceptions generally, the new tax law side, is people really don't understand the tax implications of divorce. And they can be enormous. Now they're even worse because with the new tax code, I've noticed, and it's very new. It's just days old. I find that people are mixing up pieces of the old tax code with the new tax code, and they're mixing up pieces of the new tax code together. A perfect example of that would be the fact that on January the 1st of 2019, alimony, that we call spousal support in Virginia, but it's the same thing, will no longer be deductible, which is extremely interesting for those of us that help people through their divorces for a living. But I would say at least a good third of my clients never knew that it was deductible in the first place.
In the first place, wow, yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
So it really is interesting because it's a huge difference. Child support has never been deductible, but alimony has been deductible, and it's what's called an above-the-line deduction, which means it's rock solid for about 75 years. So this really changes everything when there is a divorce, that alimony is a possibility. And there's no guarantee of alimony, but where it's a possibility. So a lot of the bargaining is sort of out the window. And it's going to be difficult, especially for people going to court. I mean, it's a really good opportunity to sit down and settle your case, because most of the alimony calculations out there, and we have a really strong one in Fairfax County, it's not required that parties use it, but it's very well respected. Those calculations, most places, were developed with the knowledge that alimony was deductible. And if you go to court and you're trying to show the judge, hey, let's not apply this calculation because the tax code's changed. In order to do that, you have to provide evidence of the tax impact, which means you have to pay for a CPA, at least where I live. You would have to pay for a CPA to come in and testify, which is absurd and expensive.
As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed guest today is Supreme Court of Virginia certified mediator and certified divorce financial analyst, Robin Graine. And she's here today talking about the impact of the new tax code on divorce. Now, with that in mind then, Robin, and for those people who are listening in right now, please share one common but unknown pitfall that they need to be aware of no matter what situation they find themselves in.
No matter what situation they find themselves
Exactly.
in. Well, I would say a common pitfall, particularly with the new tax code, would be that people try, and they're trying to do what's right by their family. They try not to get professional help, and they try to 100% settle their divorces without the assistance of a lawyer or a mediator or a certified divorce financial analyst or a CPA or a financial planner or any of those types of people that would be able to help them. And if they can't exactly give them an answer, they can at least spot an issue. What I recommend to people that want to settle everything before they come in to see me, I recommend that they can do the best they can, but to settle in broad strokes. And one of the key areas that most people don't understand, especially now, is the area of the tax implications of divorce. So, for example, I had a case where everything was settled, and the mom even went so far as to refinance the marital residence in her own name. She got what's called a cash-out refinance. So she refinanced the house and got some money in the refinance process and paid the debt off. And then they came in to see me. Meanwhile, when she went to sell the house, and the plan was to sell it in 3 years, she was going to be paying an absolute ton of money to the federal government in what's called capital gains taxes. And I won't go into the details of that, but it was the perfect example of why you should settle your divorce with broad strokes, and before you sign that property settlement agreement, particularly in this climate with a brand new tax code that's over 500 pages long, you might want to run a sort of a mock tax return. You're not going to have all the information till you have all the information, but do the best you can to run a return and see what it's going to look like. Because the playing field has changed a lot.
This is really interesting what you're sharing with us today, Robin. You kind of got me curious. How many years, let's say how many combined years, because I do understand that you are also an attorney, but not a practicing attorney, if I understand correctly.
That's right.
So how many combined years, without going into your background, because we're going to speak about that soon, but how many combined years have you been practicing family law and divorce mediation?
Yeah. I practiced family law, both child abuse law. I was also a child support and child abuse hearing officer and a divorce attorney for 7 years in the city of Chicago. So that's when I was in my 20s and 30s. Then I spent 11 years as a stay-at-home mom, and I also owned a personal training and fitness company. Then, in 2009, after 11 years of not practicing law, I opened Graine Mediation. So the combined total of my family law and mediation experience is about 15 years.
Right. 15 years. So when you think back to all of the people who you have helped in that span of time, 15 years, and you think about any day of the week where yeah, you're waking up in the morning, the alarm clock goes off, it's 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, and yeah, you're waking up to face another day of helping those people, those hundreds of people, possibly even thousands of people who you've helped in the past, to create a transformation from point A, from when they picked the phone up and gave you a call or walked into your office, to point B, where they've achieved their desired outcomes. On a day like that, Robin, how does Robin Graine feel on a day like that?
Well, I love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I created this. As a matter of fact, when I decided that I was going to open a mediation practice, I was told by several people that was a bad idea. It was a long time ago. It was 8.5 years ago, and mediation wasn't as popular as it is today. But I realized as a very young attorney, in my 20s and early 30s, that there was something very, very wrong with the system of divorce law. And I got into law to help people solve problems. I like two things. I like helping people solve problems, and for some odd reason, I like to be involved with families in distress. And I've liked that since I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. I guess I feel that at the end of the day, the most important relationships that we have are our family relationships.
So
and
true.
I never wanted to do right. It is true. They are the base. They are the base of every other relationship that you will have in your life. So every day I wake up excited to help people. I've worked. I would say that I relaxed a lot into my career when I became a certified Divorce Financial Analyst, and that was sort of the icing on the cake of all of my knowledge. And I keep up with all of the, like with the new tax code. I feel like that's all I've done for the last few weeks is just study and make sure that I'm boned up on this for my clients. Mm-hmm. The relationship part, the helping people transition through their life, that comes more natural for me. Mm-hmm. So every day I know I help people. And I know that I've been told many, many times when people call me that I've helped them. Everybody doesn't come in to see me, but everybody I talk to, I help.
So when you're able to help solve those problems and help those families in distress who come to you, what does it actually give you then, Robin? On a deep down personal level, what does it give you? How does it make you feel?
Well, tired.
I love it.
I would say that I'm very. I'm on the edge of my seat through the mediations. I am sort of becoming one with those people because I assist people to step in each other's shoes and try to see things from the other person's perspective, which means that I need to role model that. Right. Because that's very difficult for people that are going through it. It's very difficult for people, period, let alone people going through a divorce. So I feel tired. So that's one, because it's an awful lot of work. But I feel, I guess I can compare it to when I was practicing law, where I felt every day at the end of the day that I really had not accomplished much. Even if I won in court, maybe I won, but maybe that wasn't going to do well by a child. Or maybe I won because the other attorney didn't do their homework. Right. So it wasn't a very satisfying win. But if I can help people transition, which is what I do, I'm a transition expert, really.
Fundamentally, sure.
Absolutely, that's what I do. So if I can help people transition well, I have a lot of satisfaction in that.
Perfect.
And usually if I can get them to come in and see me, it works out well.
Now, I can imagine why you're so tired, because you do have to give so much. I would imagine you would have to put your own ego aside and just really step into the shoes of the clients that you're helping, and that's emotionally draining. So even though it sounded funny when you said you were tired, because that was the last thing I was expecting you to say, it does it makes sense. I can relate to that.
I've learned not to plan. Like, I'm not going to mediate with people for a few hours, particularly if I know it's a contentious case where the people don't see eye to eye. I know after that I'm not going to sit down and write a settlement agreement. Exactly. Because I'm tired.
You've given everything, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm emotionally exhausted. Absolutely. But I haven't woken up in years and felt that I wasn't contributing. And that is important to me.
And that comes through when you're helping your clients. It's I think those are the things which are written between the lines, the things that you don't see. They happen on dare I say, even a spiritual level, that people just feel that.
I think they know that, but the type of clients that I deal with, they want to know that I know what I'm talking about. They're not messing around. Most of my clients have been through marriage therapy. The vast majority have been through marriage therapy, and they are coming to me to help them through tough custody situations, to help them set child support, to help them set alimony, and divide and distribute their oftentimes very complex financial estates. However, I find some of the most difficult financial situations, not necessarily tax situations, but financial situations, are where the people don't have a lot of money, which is a big differentiating factor, because when I was working for a law firm in Chicago, the firm made lots and lots of money. The wealthier you were, the more money the firm made. I find some of my cases are more expensive where there's less money, because it's much more difficult to support mom, dad, and the kids when there's less to go around.
Well, Robin, you certainly have me convinced that you know what you're speaking about, and so much so that I think I'm going to file for divorce just so that I can be one of your clients. How does that sound? Does that sound? I can be your client.
Not recommended.
Not recommended? Okay.
Not recommended.
I'm sure. Okay. Just the thought of it, though, was like, okay, let me just file for divorce so I can work with Robin. She sounds great. Anyway, while we're speaking about you, seriously, though, share a little bit about your backstory then, Robin. How did you get started? What led you to this field? And share with our listeners something about your formal education and especially your experience as it relates to divorce mediation.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Well, as I stated, my background was originally as a lawyer for 7 years in Chicago, working with abused and neglected children and doing divorce work, also as a hearing officer. And in 1994, they took all of the hearing officers from the Chicago courthouse, and they sent us all to mediator school and got us all certified as mediators. Nothing like they do in terms of training nowadays. It was 40-hour training, but nobody else in the courthouse was certified as a mediator, and they wanted the hearing officers. I couldn't even tell you exactly why. But some of the judges learned about the hearing officers being certified, and they found my office mate and I, for whatever reason. They chose us, and a couple of the judges started sending their visitation disputes to us when the parents couldn't get along in terms of visitation. And that's how I got my feet wet with mediation. And they were super tough cases because most of these people weren't coming to mediation because they wanted to. The judge made them. So we had to, A, convince them that mediation was a good idea, and B, get their case settled because the judge wanted the cases settled. So it was a little bit, it didn't have the voluntary spirit that my mediations now do. So I practiced law, and I really didn't like it. So I moved to Northern Virginia, which is where I came from, So when I had 1.5 children, my husband and I moved here. And I didn't know Virginia law. I knew Illinois law. Even though I was from here, I never had practiced here. And when my children were 7 and 9, I got my own surprise divorce where my husband was acting very strange and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And I ended up in therapy, and my therapist said, "I don't think it's you. I think it's your marriage." I said, "Oh, no, my marriage is fine." He says, "Go home and talk to your husband about planning for your future together." And I went home and I said, "My therapist says we need to talk about our future together, when the kids are grown up, and what do we want to do?" And he said, "I'm not interested." And I went back and told my therapist, "He's not interested." And she said, "See, I told you, you have a problem."
Oh, boy.
So sure enough, several months later, he fessed up to the fact that he had found what he called his soulmate. And so I went out and found myself an attorney. And I call it my $20,000 worth of education in Virginia law. So I used that attorney. He since has passed on, which is a shame. He was a very nice man, but very expensive man. And I call it my $20,000 master's degree in Virginia divorce law. And I would go and see my lawyer with the Illinois code tucked under one arm and the Virginia code tucked under the other, and we would compare and contrast to get the Virginia law in my head. And then my ex and I settled our case in Starbucks. We met twice in Starbucks and settled the case ourselves. And his attorney's fees were over $20,000. He says $20,000 worth of making the attorney not come after me. And mine were $20,000 for my conversations with him about Virginia law. So we had a divorce that was about $45,000. And we settled the case in Starbucks. And I said, "I'm going to open the mediation practice. This is ridiculous.
Right.
I'm not going to try to practice law. I hate it. I don't want to do it. The ethics of law are not to my liking." So I went and took my alimony money and got myself certified as a mediator by the Supreme Court of Virginia. And then I got myself certified as a certified divorce financial analyst. I did a crash course that continues to this day in digital marketing. And here I am. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Fantastic. That's a great story. And thanks for sharing that with us, Robin.
Sure. I try to be a role model for my clients. I transitioned, which means they can too.
Exactly. Speaking right from the horse's mouth, right? So that's always the best way. Always the best way to lead. So for those people who are listening in right now, then, Robin, what final thoughts would you like to leave them with before we finish up with our last question for today?
Well, I'd like to go back to the tax code for a minute, and I would like people to understand that the changes are enormous. There's no more personal exemptions, which means that the dependency exemption is gone. There's been jokes for many, many, many years about every time you have a baby, you have a little exemption. That doesn't exist anymore. The child tax credit has completely changed. And there's a lot of areas of the tax code that are unclear. So people are going to be jumping off little and big cliffs and not really know how the tax code is to be applied. And I think that it's once again really important for at least the types of people that I deal with that are trying really hard to not spend their kids' college tuition with the lawyers, to go ahead and talk about settling your case in broad strokes, but then to come and see a professional to help them tidy things up and make sure that they're not making any mistakes.
Fantastic. So if there is somebody who feels they need to know more about the impact of the new tax code on their divorce, what's the easiest way for them to connect with you then, Robin?
Go on my website. That's probably the easiest is the website. It's super simple. Graine, Graine, mediation.com. And you can set up a conference call with me there. I do free 15-minute conference calls. Extended conference calls is a small fee. Or you can send me an email from there. Or you can just pick up the phone. And if I'm available, if I'm not with clients, or if I'm not in a meeting with staff, I get the phone.
So I'm just thinking now, Robin, if I'm listening to this show in the future, you've shared some great insights and you've definitely proven that you're an educator within your own right. However, for me to pick up the phone and give you a call, I still don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to sell me? Is it going to be a tough, hard sales? Just briefly, what's going to happen when I call your number then, Robin?
Well, if you're looking for a free 15-minute consult, and I'm really not watching the clock, so 10, 15, 20 minutes, what have you, I ask the people how they would like to use that time. If they don't have any particular thought in mind, which is not uncommon, they're looking for me to be the leader, I use that time to explain to them the process and procedure of mediation, the cost structure of mediation, and if they're interested, if they're also talking with attorneys, we'll do some comparison of litigation to mediation. And that right there is, depending on how many questions they have, is 5, maximum 10 minutes. Right. And then they're usually comfortable with me. And then they start talking to me about some of the more particulars of their case. The other thing I let them know is all conversations with the individual client prospect are confidential. So they don't have to worry that I'm going to say maybe something mean that they said about the other person to the other person. Yeah. So the phone calls are very, very helpful in terms of getting that person's, the person that's calling me, the spouse that's calling me's perspective on the situation and their perspective on the other person's perspective, which is really helpful to me to know where people's heads are at before they come in and see me.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Robin. That's going to be very useful for our listeners to know that there is no risk to actually pick up the phone. They're not going to be hard sold. They're going to be listened to and treated fairly. So, yeah, we are out of time, unfortunately. I feel that we're just starting to get warmed up and we could sit here and talk for at least a few more hours. However, we do have to go. So let me just remind everybody once again, we have been listening to Supreme Court of Virginia certified mediator and certified divorce financial analyst, Robin Graine. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Robin. You have certainly demonstrated, as you said in your own words, that you are an educator, you are a true advocate and trustworthy advisor for your client's success. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share some of my knowledge with your listeners. I really appreciate that, Stuart.
You are so welcome, my dear. And I'd also like to take a short moment just to say a big thank you to our listeners. Without you, we wouldn't have anybody to speak to. So thank you for joining us on this very insightful and informative discussion with one of the top divorce mediators in the Fairfax, Virginia area today. Again, her name is Robin Graine. Make sure you do check her out. Give her a call, visit her website, send her an email. Whatever you do decide to do, I am 100% convinced that after listening to Robin today, that you're going to be in a great place to get started. So that's it for today, folks. Again, my name is Stuart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.